Hello and welcome to Then and Now, a conversation with Hosea, day 21. My name is Derek Hovind. I'm the pastor at Salem Lutheran Church in Orlando, Florida. And for about 26 days, we are reading through the whole of the book of Hosea, as well as reflecting a little bit on what it would have meant in Hosea's time and letting the prophet put some questions before us. Today we read almost all of chapter 11. We're going to read verses 1 through 11. We will pick up the 12th verse as we roll into chapter 12 tomorrow. But chapter 11 comes on the heels of 8, 9, and 10, which were all heavily leaning in the direction of accusation and punishment of God's people because of their infidelity of worship, but also their leadership's unfaithfulness and all of the charges that have continued to be levied by the prophet throughout the book. Chapter 11. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. The more I called them, the more they went from me. They kept sacrificing to the Baals and offering incense to idols. Yet it was I who taught Ephraim to walk. I took them up in my arms, but they did not know that I healed them. I led them with cords of human kindness, with bands of love. I was to them like those who lift infants to their cheeks. I bent down to them and fed them. They shall return to the land of Egypt, and Assyria shall be their king, because they have refused to return to me. The sword rages in their cities. It consumes their oracle priests and devours because of their schemes. My people are bent on turning away from me. To the Most High they call, but he does not raise them up at all. How can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I hand you over, O Israel? How can I make you like Admah? How can I treat you like Zeboim? My heart recoils within me. My compassion grows warm and tender. I will not execute my fierce anger. I will not again destroy Ephraim, for I am God and no mortal, the Holy One in your midst, and I will not come in wrath. They shall go after the Lord who roars like a lion. When he roars, his children shall come trembling from the west. They shall come trembling like birds from Egypt and like doves from the land of Assyria. And I will return them to their homes, says the Lord. There's a few things going on in this chapter which ultimately ends in a place of hope, with God saying, I will return them to their homes. So we had early in the book of Hosea this movement between gloom and dark expectations, but then coming back to places of restoration and hope in the Lord. Chapters 8, 9, and 10 have been a long stretch of the punishment sort of stuff, but here we end close to the end of chapter 11 with this restorative hope that God will bring the people back home. But throughout the chapter, Hosea actually gives us another metaphor. Much of the book has been steeped in the metaphor of a marriage and Hosea's marriage and the infidelity in that marriage. And now we come to a different metaphor. It's a parent-child metaphor. In particular, a rebellious child, but a caring parent. And as we read through from the beginning of the chapter, we hear God saying that I taught Ephraim to walk, took Israel up in arms. There was healing, leading them with cords of human kindness and bands of love. It's like those who lift infants up to their cheeks, right? So there's a physical tenderness and care that is happening here. So God is this caring parent. Now, it does not say God is father, right? It says caring parent, and we understand that God does not have a gender. And this is a great place in this prophet that we can see that God is a caring parent and that God then enters into this relationship with this rebellious child. Like some of the other metaphors, this can be a hard one, especially for people who don't have a caring parent, to try to see God in that space as the caring parent and the rebellious child. So we should take care and understand that even Hosea was a parent and had his own children, and maybe this metaphor grows out of his own sense of their rebellion against him. And so we've got this new metaphor, this caring parent, rebellious child. Now, the important part about this is that in the Deuteronomic law, either parent could bring punishment to a child for being rebellious. And if it was really rebellious, right, even stoning might have been a possibility. And so after this caring parent metaphor is set up, then we get to the rebellious child about returning to Egypt and Assyria and the ways they've worshipped false gods and all the rest of it. But then it comes back to the point where then that punishment could come. God asks, how can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I hand you over, O Israel? And it moves then away from punishment and towards this place of forgiveness and restoration. What we find then is that in this 11th chapter, a movement from legality to love, right? There's a legality that could be called upon and lived into, and the charges are certainly made, but the response is actually not the legal response. The response is love. The people have been unfaithful. The people have done things worthy of punishment, and God says, nope, I am the caring parent that is going to love the rebellious child where they are, rather than live into that bit of legality. So as this part of this chapter, right, ends us in this space of hope that God is going to bring the people home and that we actually have this promise of restoration, the question that the prophet can put before us this day lives in that same space of legality and love. We might ask what ways that we can be really legalistic, and whether that's in the church with our faith, whether it's in our neighborhoods, homeowners associations, whether it's in our broader metropolitan areas in which we live, our nation or the world. What ways do we fall back on legalisms, and where then is there an invitation for us to perhaps lead the way with love instead of legality? This isn't to say that we don't need laws, right? That's part of living together in human community, but it is to say that sometimes love can, right, lead the way instead of the legality, and that might get us to some different places. So the invitation for us today is to think about that. Where in your life could love take the space of some legality? Or where are there legalities that you might consider bringing some love into those spaces to perhaps live in a different way? None of these questions that the prophet puts before us are easy, but they are wonderful things to wrestle with. So thank you for being with me here on day 21. We will continue tomorrow by finishing up that last verse of chapter 11 and jumping into chapter 12.